Hello there. It is said that the way you do prepping or survivalism is somewhat related to your culture. So join me in this episode as we try to talk about said topic. By the way, I'm Jason, your host. I'm a college professor. I'm also a writer, rock guitarist or musician. I'm also into martial arts, the outdoors, day culture, and of course prepping and survivalism. We all know that the Philippines is a highly agricultural country, and the Philippines historically got subjugated for a long time by the Spaniards since 1521, and after that the Americans also came into power here, and after that, during the World War II era, of course the Japanese also occupied the Philippines. So somewhat we can say that the Philippines is highly diverse in culture because of said influences and political and historical upheavals. We can also say that the Philippines is a post-colonial country or even a neo-colonial country. That is why the way people do prepping here may not be the same with other cultures. Some people say that the Filipinos are not preppers by nature or by culture, but let's try to look into the way Filipinos do prepping using this particular setup that we have here. Well, the things that I'll be mentioning would of course be limited and would only concern my thoughts about the topic, and may not cover the entire Philippine landscape. But nevertheless, let's for the sake of this channel, let's just talk about it. Okay, let's check the setup so we can properly talk about prepping in the Philippine setting or Bicol setting. As we said, we cannot really talk about the entire Philippine scenario. We cannot cover the entire Philippines. So we can only discuss a portion, or we can only talk about a particular area. Well, as for area, we are in the Bicol region, so I can talk about this area and some items that could be found also in the entire Philippines, not only Bicol. Well, as per prepping, we already said that Bicolanos or Filipinos have an agricultural situation, okay, and as a kind of indigenous approach to life in philosophy, Filipinos, like other groups of people or nations or tribes, are also highly spiritual. So we can somehow look at the two items, agriculture and spirituality, as the source of Filipino mindset in prepping. You see, some people would say that Filipinos really have no culture of prepping because apparently we are really a bit complacent. But somehow I believe that every people, every race, every nation, or human beings really have a built-in instinct to self-preservation. So first, agriculture. Well, the Filipinos, Bicolanos per se, would really focus on agriculture, and that's their way of doing prepping. Although they may look complacent at times, but that's because of the abundance of the land. Living off the land is quite easy here in the Philippines, if you think about it, because most lands here are actually fertile. So just here where I am, you can observe that all around me it's green. So plants grow. Plants grow here in the Philippines. So there, prepping here is somewhat related to agriculture. And also, if you think about it, here in Bicol we have the term kadlagan for forest. If you are privy to the Bicol language, you would know that kadlagan could very well mean kadulagan, or could very well mean a place to escape. Kadlagan, or place to escape. So that's actually the primordial meaning of forest here in Bicol. Forest means refuge. So even before we discovered, or we coined the term bug out location, somehow the Bicolanos already consider the forest as bug out location, and you can see this among the Cimarrones who actually escaped, who actually in disgust of Spanish rule escaped to the mountains, particularly at Mount Isarog, and they rebelled against the Spaniards while at Mount Isarog. So there, that's an example of a tribe or a group of people using the forest as their refuge. So now we're looking at items that could represent agricultural state and spirituality. Well, we have here a symbol of our agricultural state, the skull, skull of water buffalo with horns still attached. Like most cultures, Bicolanos or even other tribes here in the Philippines, including tribes from Bontoc province, northern Luzon, Cordillera, most of us actually use animal remains as material for our weapons. So there, for example, we use water buffalo horn as handle or hilt for our bolos. This one is a mini ginunting with a water buffalo horn. So there, we use water buffalo or a kind of an animal remain as hilt. Same with this dagger, double blade dagger, which is already a modern build. We also used here water buffalo as part of the handle. We use leaf spring here. Leaf spring as a 5160 carbon steel as material for the blade itself. But I think our early blacksmiths also used metal, iron ore before, when leaf spring was not yet available. We also have here the jaw of the water buffalo that you can actually use as a weapon as well. So that's because primordially Bicolanos also use animal remains as weapons, just like other cultures. So what else? Slingshot, yeah, of course. Slingshot is kind of universal among various cultures. It crosses boundaries. We all know very well that David was able to defeat Goliath using a slingshot. So it's also a Israeli or a weapon by the Hebrews. All right. However, here in Bicol or in the Philippines, we actually use guava wood as material for the slingshot. But this one is already marketplace derivative, so I don't think this is guava wood. Of course, this is not guava wood. Spirituality, you see, Filipinos somehow prepare, but they still consider they still consider God or Bathala. All right, so we use here some, well, just a representation of our amulet culture. Amulet culture. We have here a wild boar tooth, a kind of a representation of indigenous amulet culture, and we have here M1 Garand slug, a vintage World War II era M1 Garand slug, to represent the use of bullet slug as pendant, a kind of a practice that we acquired via the Macabebe Scouts from the Americans during the Filipino-American War. It is noted that the Americans wore bullet pendants because they believed that wearing bullet pendants, particularly silver bullet, could ward off werewolves, or the bullet could be, could be used to shoot a werewolf and actually kill it. But here in the Philippines, we believe that wearing a bullet pendant, slug pendant, is actually effective against negative entities. It wards off negative entities. So speaking of bullet pendants, we have here Browning machine gun slug coming from Mount Isarog, a place where the Japanese Imperial forces had their last stand, and this somehow represents the political upheavals, the political upheavals that happened here in the Philippines, particularly World War II. Here are 4 more slugs that I turned into pendants. Okay. This is from M1 Garand, but I cleaned it up already. I use sandpaper. But this one is, I already mentioned this before, this one is not my work. This was made by a friend of mine. I don't know what caliber this is. Maybe M16, I'm not sure. But it's well done. It's well made. So there, political upheavals, World War II. Yeah, maybe we can glean upon our prepper culture via these symbols. Of course, here's Squires Bingham air pistol. You see, the Philippines have a very strict gun law. We have a very strict regulation on firearms acquisition and possession and carry. So most Filipinos just have air guns, air pistols, air rifles, etc., etc. So that's our small discussion on Filipino way of prepping, agricultural, and also and also a little bit spiritual. Somehow that's why people say that Filipinos depend a lot on God. That's why we are a bit complacent or something like that. So perhaps it's really a part of our culture, but then again, we also have our own way of doing prepping. And you know very well that Filipinos are also highly educated and intelligent, and that is why they actually do well in many arenas and fields. We have really great Filipino engineers, great Filipino writers, inventors, and scientists. And we can use their items for our prepping culture. Right, that's all for now. As I said, this is just a small discussion, small sharing on, you know, things that we could use as symbols to represent Philippine psyche as per prepping and survivalism. So here I am Jason, your host, and this channel is devoted to current events. Oh my! We crashed. So it goes to say that prepping and survivalism here in the Philippines maybe needs an upgrade. It needs an upgrade. Alright. Alright, that was our small discussion, small sharing on some symbols that we could use to talk about the Philippine way, you know, when we talk about prepping and survivalism, the Philippine way. The discussion may not be complete. You may want to add more, but don't forget to like or react, comment, share, subscribe. By the way, I'm Jason, your host. This is Hagbayon channel, a channel devoted to current events, literature, rock music, martial arts, blade culture, prepping, survivalism. I'm signing off. Remember, the pen is mightier with a sword.